What is the meaning of life? Eric Lyons is going to try to tell us, although he clearly doesn't have a clue what the hell he's talking about. Because when have the religious ever demonstrated that they actually understood the claims coming out of their own mouths? Never once, and I predict this is just going to validate that idea. So let's get going, and I hope you brought eye drops because I think you're going to need them. Today we're back with Eric Lyons, and I know, I'm sorry, I hate it as much as you do. But this time out, he wants to tell atheists what atheism means, when it's very clear he doesn't have a clue about, well, anything at all. Because Eric is a laughable dumbass. He really is. This is why these channels just make us groan and roll our eyes. Because anybody with half a brain cell would know better than to suggest any of this. And I guess that explains Eric Lyons, doesn't it? Because he's a complete moron.
I wonder how many casual atheists have actually thought through the fact that atheism implies that life ultimately is meaningless.
Atheism doesn't imply anything. Atheism is the lack of belief in any gods. That's it. Full stop. Of course, the religious desperately try to read into that anything that will make their side look better, because it's kind of hard to make their side look worse, even if it doesn't actually exist. You can give your own life any meaning that you want. What they're really talking about is that atheism doesn't permit some imaginary father figure in the sky to tell you what to do. And that's because we're not children. Maybe Eric should give that a shot.
One of the world's most celebrated atheistic evolutionary writers of the late 20th and early 21st centuries, Dr. Richard Dawkins, confessed that the universe that we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is, at bottom, no purpose, nothing but pitiless indifference.
And that is true. So what? That's like saying that the speed of light is 186,282 miles per second. Okay, so what? That doesn't have any deeper implications. It is what it is, and that's all that it is. Yet, for religious idiots like Eric, he really wants the universe to have something in it that it demonstrably doesn't, just so that his pathetic little childish fifis get stroked. I'm not sure why this is supposed to impress anyone, because whether anybody likes it or not, reality is what reality is, and your feelings don't remotely enter into it. But let's see what crazy nonsense Eric Lyons has to say. This ought to be, well, let's be honest, this ought to be really stupid.
A few years later, Graham Lawton penned a one-page article titled, "What is the Meaning of Life?" What answer did this leading atheistic evolutionist give? Here was his heavy-hitting first line. The harsh answer is, it has none. Your life may feel like a big deal to you, he wrote, but it's actually a random blip of matter and energy in an uncaring and impersonal universe.
And he's right. So what? Because people like Eric are looking desperately for some authority figure in the sky to tell them what to go and do with their lives. And that's just dumb. They are looking for people to treat them like the immature little children that they are. There is, as Lawton said, no inherent meaning to your life. No matter how important that you want to feel, the universe doesn't give a damn about you. Deal with it. This is the world you live in. The universe has no capacity to give a damn about you. There you go. Live with it. Welcome to the real world. Yet, Eric and people like him, they are terrified to live in the real world because they are just immature children living in the bodies of adults. And how pathetic is that?
Other than subjective feelings of meaning and importance, atheism implies we will never get objective data on the matter.
So? Because you haven't demonstrated that there is anything beyond what we actually see. You might really wish that there was, but that only makes you a delusional git. And that's kind of Eric Lyons in a nutshell, isn't it? That seems to be the only argument that any of these people can offer. But it doesn't make us happy. Well, so what? Grow up and deal with it. Where did you ever get the stupid idea that your happiness means anything to anybody but you? Because it doesn't. Rent a clue and figure it out.
Atheism simply fails to capture a true or higher meaning. In light of such valid but depressing confessions about atheism, I would simply like to point out two beautiful truths about theism.
Before he gets to that, I want to point out what he said because it demonstrates the position he's approaching this from. He said that Dawkins and Lawton were valid but depressing. So he's admitting that they're right, that their statements are correct, but he just doesn't like the reality of the situation. This is just, I don't like the real world, so I'm not going to believe it. Yeah, are you stupid? Wait, don't answer that. It's already pretty clear. These people have a lot of emotional problems, and they think that they can change reality through force of will and whining and complaining. And that's just stupid, because Eric Lyons is an idiot.
And specifically, biblical theism. First, a person can logically come to know that the God of the Bible exists.
Oh, really? How is that done exactly? Because he specified the God of the Bible, and absolutely no argument that you can possibly come up with will ever get you anywhere close. Now, he might try to come up with an example in a minute, I don't know, but if he does, I'll address it when he does. But as we know, none of the typical religious philosophical arguments will actually get you anywhere remotely close to any specific God. At best, if you don't pay too much attention, they might get you somewhere in the vicinity of a deistic God, but they can't get you to the God of the Bible. But we'll see, won't we? I guess we'll see.
If matter demands a maker, if life on earth demands a life giver, if complex functional design in the universe demands a designer, and if the supernatural attributes of the Bible demand a supernatural author.
None of which is actually true, and as I said, it doesn't get you anywhere remotely close to the biblical God, only to a vague deistic version, maybe, if you squint right and don't really care about the conclusion. If you could demonstrate that any of that was actually so, which of course he can't, then maybe we might take him seriously, but of course we don't. And this is just wishful thinking at play. He wants to believe that his God is real, therefore he sees his God in everything. But that's true of any religion, isn't it? A Hindu would see their gods, a Muslim would see their God, and a rational person would just see nature at work. He's got all of his work ahead of him to get to the God of the Bible. And good luck on that, Eric, because you're gonna need it.
Then the evidence demands this verdict: the God of the Bible exists.
No, it doesn't. The evidence demands that Eric Lyons is an imbecile. But of course, this is why they don't want to talk to us, isn't it? They'll talk about us, they'll make up stories about us, they'll use us as a boogeyman to scare their parishioners, but they don't actually want to communicate directly with us in any kind of intelligent back and forth conversation, because they know they'll just get blown out of the water. And I mean more than they do on their own. Absolutely none of this holds any water whatsoever. This is just Eric playing make-believe like the immature little child that he is.
Second, the Word of God gives mankind the meaning and purpose that he inherently longs for.
Not true. It doesn't do a thing for me or the vast majority of people on the planet who are not Christian. This brings us back to the difference between what Eric wishes were true versus what is demonstrably true, and those two things seem to have absolutely nothing to do with each other. This is exactly why I have so little respect for Eric Lyons and his cohorts. Because this is all demonstrably about his feelings and his wishful thinking, and it is never, ever, ever about the demonstrable facts. He just wants it to be true, so in his tiny little mind it just has to be, whether there is any corroboratory evidence to support it or not. Just because you have an emotional attachment to the idea, that doesn't make it true until you can prove that it is. And good luck on that.
Please understand, rational Christians do not come to believe in God and in the Bible as the inspired word simply because we want some objective meaning to our life on earth. Rather, once we see the evidence for God and His Word and commit our lives to the Lord in obedience to the gospel of Christ, our admittedly innate but formerly uninformed desire for a higher meaning is at that moment made complete by the perfect law of liberty.
Well, that was a bunch of word salad, wasn't it? Because you don't have rational Christians. I know people like Eric here really wish that they did, but they really don't. Just like they wish there was a God, but they can't actually get there from here. Faith isn't an objectively demonstrable path to truth. I know they wish it was, but it's just not. If it was, then every single religion out there would be true, and every single God that man has ever dreamed up would be real, because their followers have all had the same amount of faith as the Christians do. None of them seem willing to go down that path, of course, because they think that they're special and everybody else is wrong. But guess what? Every other religion thinks the exact same thing about them. So who is right, and how do you prove it? Eric doesn't remotely care, does he?
In fact, God gave His inspired word so that the man of God may be complete.
Says who? How do you prove it? Because every other religion out there thinks their books are special too. How do you prove which ones are and which ones aren't, if any of them are at all, without employing blind faith? And good luck on that one too, because this is where Eric and the apologists go entirely wrong, one of many, many, many places. They rely on what they believe to be true, as if it were objectively true, when this isn't remotely defensible at all. Just because you want it, that doesn't mean you get it. This is another childish game played by the childish religious. It's like holding your breath until you turn blue.
No doubt, part of this divinely given, God-revealed perfection or completeness is one's realization that the human life actually has real objective meaning.
Yeah, once again, prove it. Here we see again that this is just Eric playing make-believe for emotional rewards. He wants it to be true, so it's gotta be true, because he can't possibly be wrong, can he? That would make him sad, and he can't be sad. That's the whole reason for this entire imaginary God that he believes in, after all. It's there to make him happy, because he only cares about being happy. Being right, that's not remotely important to him. He doesn't care about that at all. I mean, how pathetic is that?
The best atheism can do is to ask people to choose individually for themselves what the meaning of human life is.
And since we're the only ones around that can demonstrably do it, what's wrong with that? Oh, yeah, of course, this isn't about reality for people like Eric. It's about stroking their feelings and philosophically masturbating to get to an emotionally comforting conclusion. This is where you have to be willing to ask the hard questions. And for people like Eric, they don't want to have to do that, do they? None of this is ever about the truth. It's always about emotional comfort. And that's one of many, many reasons why I say that Eric is an idiot. Because he's just acting like a child.
But such meaning is entirely subjective. One person could decide that the meaning of life is to eat as much good food and to have as many sex partners as possible. Another could easily say that the meaning of life is to explore space and to establish a colony on Mars.
And that is true, because here's the reality. The only thing you can assign meaning to is your own life. If you want to go through life enjoying fine food, fine. Go right ahead if that's what you like. If you want to be an astronaut, then that's up to you. You can set that as a goal and go for it. Because Eric isn't trying to decide what he personally wants out of life. He's trying to force others to go along with his grand plan. This isn't about reality. It's about control. That's what religion does. Give us your money and do what we say. Otherwise, we're going to threaten you with indemonstrable crap that happens after you die. Whether Eric likes it or not, that's kind of a problem for anyone who doesn't think like Eric does. And I'm using that term very loosely because I don't know that Eric knows how to think at all.
On the other hand, Christianity offers the world real, objective meaning.
Well, that's your claim. Now, how about you back it up? Of course, he can't, which is why all he's doing is making up nonsense and empty claims that fall apart at the first moment of critical scrutiny, because he's not actually concerned about what's really going on. This is part of a script. It's part of a scam. Now, I'm sure that Eric has fallen for it himself, hook, line, and sinker, but it still isn't demonstrably real. Absolutely none of this can be demonstrated to be true. And of course, that's why he's not making this video for atheists, in a place that atheists are going to come across it, and they're going to respond. It's why this video has hardly any likes and no comments at all, at least at the time I'm making it. I'm sure Eric is just deleting the ones that he doesn't like. Granted, I can't know that for sure. I will be honest in that, but we've seen the same kind of thing in the past where we can prove religious channels are deleting comments that say things that they don't like. I mean, I've had people comment on my videos that they went over to the original and commented and it just magically vanished like it was never there. But it seems suspicious that for a video with almost 5,000 views, absolutely nobody has had anything at all to say. I mean, really, nobody at all? Yeah, I don't buy it, sorry.
The Creator of mankind has informed us that we exist on earth for the purpose of choosing, by the grace of God, where we want to live eternally. As we prepare to meet our Maker, He has instructed us to fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment, with every secret thing, whether good or evil.
Really? Prove it! Because this is the question that I ask over and over and over and over again to the religious, and they never even make an honest attempt to answer it. It's all faith and nothing else, and they expect everyone on the receiving end to just mindlessly nod their heads and believe, because that's what religion programs you to do. Except that's not how rational people operate, and Eric here, he seems to think that Christians are rational, even though they absolutely do not act like it ever. I mean, Eric certainly doesn't. Why should we think anybody else would? This is not rationality at work. It's childishness. But what else is new? This is a pretty good example of why I think Eric Lyons is such a joke. Not that we really need another example, but there you go. And I think a lot of them are, often for the same reason, because they simply aren't concerned about any of the obvious questions that come up in response to their absurd claims. Of course, his audience, they don't ask those questions, do they? If they did, they'd quickly find their way out of his audience because he's not concerned about answering anything. He doesn't care if it's true. He only cares if it makes him feel good. Because for anybody who isn't taking what he says at face value, this is really pretty dumb. And it's not just him either. I've talked about this before. This is how all of apologetics works. They expect to be talking to people who already believe everything that comes out of their mouths, and when faced with someone who just isn't impressed with the emotional drivel, they just run away. They make excuses. They make empty threats. And then they head for the hills, back to their intended audience, where they can just make all of the excuses for why they failed that they want, and they know that their followers will just lap it up. But they shouldn't. Nobody should, because this is all really, really stupid. You can see exactly how stupid it is if you just substitute something else in place of God. Bigfoot. We'll do Bigfoot. Imagine Roger Patterson, the guy who supposedly made the famous video of Bigfoot that turned out to be a complete hoax. Imagine he wrote a book telling everyone what Bigfoot wanted them to do. Now just copy and replace everything that Eric said with Bigfoot and the Bigfoot Bible. Does that actually change anything? No. No, it doesn't. Not one bit. Because this is all the same stupid stuff peddled to the emotionally gullible by con men like Eric, who, even if they believe it, they're still making a profit from it, aren't they? It always comes down to that. Eric is a con man, whether he knows it or not. And that's never going to stop being the case until he can eject his faith and come back with facts. And good luck on that. I don't think that will ever happen. I suspect we're all going to be waiting a very, 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 very long time for any of the apologists to ever realize that they need to have an actual relationship with reality. Because they don't care. Because that doesn't make them a buck, does it? Because this is just a scam. Boom, 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 boom.